it somewhere. Should actually ask him first.
Welcome to the Octopus Movement podcast, where we celebrate the unique minds and extraordinary potential of nonlinear thinkers. I'm your host for today, Dr. Janice Campbell, and we'll be exploring how the power of nonlinear thinking can transform the world. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest for today, Mary McClements, a founding member of the Octopus Movement, a multi-potentialite, with a history of higher education, program management, and a slew of organizational skills. She now helps people weather change and growth in her role as a career, leadership, and trauma-informed coach. Hello, Mary. I am so pleased to have this opportunity to talk with you.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
You're welcome. So, as I am wont to do, let's dive right in.
Love it.
I'm curious, how did your brand of nonlinear thinking get you here?
To the Octopus Movement or to...
However you define here.
Well, like many nonlinear thinkers, I have done a lot of different things throughout my life. Like you mentioned, I was in education. I'm also a visual artist. I also am a teacher. I also have a podcast. I also do victim advocacy work, right? So, I was one of those people who grew up in a family that were very different from me and didn't value my strengths. And so I kind of, I went along life trying to do work that I thought my dad would be proud of and enjoyed some of it. And then maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I realized that, all of these things, and it's not a line, it's this and that and circular, and all of these things actually have led me to exactly where I want to be. It was really an eye-opening and life-changing moment when I recognized that all of these things that I valued and the strengths that I had were my superpowers, and I didn't need my parents. I'm 53, and this is only 4 or 5 years ago, but I didn't need my parents' blessings anymore, right? So I think that if you're open and observant, that whatever path you're on could potentially lead you to exactly where you need to be.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so does anything pop to mind of either personal or professional nonlinear experience that led to a breakthrough or some significant shift that on the path?
Yeah, there's a handful of things, but the first thing that comes to mind is I went to the Hoffman Institute process in California. It's all over the world, and it's an intensive week-long in-person experiential psychoeducational week for adults. That's a lot of words. And people go there for many, many different reasons. My reasons were, so I was adopted, and that has been with me, the kind of the not the fallout, but the things that come, like abandonment, not feeling worthy, all those things that really can be for anybody, but especially for people who are adopted. Right. So I had lived my life, going to therapy and kind of figuring this all out. And so the reason I went to the Hoffman process is that I'd done a lot of work around this, but I love the expression, I wanted to shine the flashlight in the corners. Like, there's more. What am I missing? And so I did this week, and it's very somatic based. It's very experiential education. So you're moving, you're trying these things. You're not just sitting there listening, which really, the moving the body really, really works for me. And so one of the things that I learned that has stuck with me most, and so this is really fun. Now I'm a Hoffman teacher candidate.
I was going to ask. I thought I saw that in your
which I am so honored. I so truly believe in the Hoffman Institute and their work and its long-lasting effects that it has on people that go through the process. But the thing that I try to embody most and learn that was really significant for me was around self-compassion, and how when we want to make change, we need to be self-compassionate with ourselves. Beating ourselves up, saying, "You idiot, I can't believe you did that," or "You should be somewhere else," that does nothing for us. But self-compassion actually does help us make change. And there is a woman named Kristen Neff who wrote a book. Actually, I have it here. She wrote this book, Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself. And this was brought up in Hoffman. And really what it is that when you respond to your failings or pain with kindness and comfort, you can get through any challenging situation. And the second piece of that is acknowledging the pain, but also remembering that everyone suffers. We all suffer. But we are intrinsically worthy of care and comfort and self-love. So yeah, that experience at the Hoffman process really changed me personally. It changed my trauma-informed coaching. It really changed how I go about all of my professional and personal aspects of my life.
I went through something similar going through acupuncture school, where nobody graduates the person that walked in the door.
Yes.
So there's a lot of resonance between what you're experiencing or what you've described and what I've experienced. So I have an inkling of what I understand, and I have heard wonderful things about the Hoffman Institute from a variety of people. So lucky you, and lucky you to become a teacher. That's fabulous.
I know, and I feel, like I said, I feel so completely honored. I'm in a lot of awe. The training is 18 months to 2 years long. I'm 6 months in it, and it's like doing the process again. It's, the first day of training, one of the teachers said, so, each of you is going to have a lot of stuff come up. And in my mind, I was like, oh, well, and I did my work, but woo, yeah. And what is coming up for me is when I am stuck, not having self-compassion. And so I've, in the past 2 weeks, really been practicing that self-compassion again, because we can meet resistance with anything that we're doing. And my go-to is, why are you resisting this? What is your problem? That negative self-talk, and oops, okay, get on the off-ramp, and then, the touch, the hand on the heart, and give yourself some love.
I think of it in terms of forgiveness.
Yes.
And I think I probably mentioned it before on the podcast, but one of my favorite quotes is from Lily Tomlin, where she says, forgiveness is giving up the hope of a better past.
Yeah. So good. Yeah.
And once we can release that, I wish I'd written this story differently. Yeah. We can see, oh, this is how I got here. And this is how, and our experiences and as I say to my acupuncture patients, any symptom that we have, regardless on what level it shows up, is either trying to get us to do something, stop us from doing something, or protect us somehow.
Yeah.
And so being able to pay attention to those things, or the things we learn from the hard stuff that we go through, then it's like, oh, wow, okay, I would not have had this if I had not gone through that.
Right. Those responses have protected us somehow in the past.
Yep.
And then, you take these patterns on, you take them on from your parents and their parents and all that. It doesn't work so well for us when we get to be adults, and we're still stuck in these patterns of protecting ourselves from when we were children, right?
Well, and it's kind of part of our job, right? Now, once we become grown-ups, right, is to pick up the stick and carry this personal evolution further, right?
Absolutely.
Rather than staying with the practices of what came behind.
And we get to do that. It's not like we have to. I mean, I think that's really, I think language is really important, right? Yes. I get to do this. I don't have to, it's like, oh, it's not I should, I hate shoulds. Like, let's get rid of those, right? But yes, that forgiveness piece is really important. So actually a couple of days ago, I was forgiving myself for being resistant to the studying it takes to become a Hoffman teacher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Studying is always an interesting process. Particularly if you've been a good student before, and you're like, oh yeah, I got this. I've done this already. And then suddenly, oh yeah, no, maybe not.
Well, what I was running into was I was not a good student. I was really good at sports and arts and English, and those things came really easy to me. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, if you're really good at something, then it's supposed to be easy. Right. And then there was the other side of the maths and sciences, and language, which I really failed at. And there was a lot of, I know the word trauma is thrown around a lot, but I had a lot of childhood trauma around my dad wanting me to, work harder stop being lazy, all those things. And it just didn't work for my brain. So studying for me means that's fear. That's scary. So, so forgiving myself for being resistant to that, right? It's okay.
Yeah. Well, and you're not that same person either anymore. You know, you're miles away from that version of you.
Yeah, and I get to do it differently.
Yeah, you get to choose however you approach it, which is lovely.
Yeah.
I'm currently reading speaking of things you think you've mastered, and then you run across it and be like, oh right, there's more.
Yeah, right.
Look at that. Look at the dust bunnies in that corner. I'm currently listening to the book Effortless, and I just lost the author's name, but it's
I've heard of it.
It's I'm listening to the audiobook, which I think is useful for this book because it's telling me things rather than me reading them. But it's about that. What if it's easy? What if actually what if you took the easy route to get there? You don't have to be the overachiever. You could skip steps 1 through 4 and just do step 5.
Yeah.
And get it done,
Yeah. And a lot of things I think that would work. And some things, if you don't do steps 1 through 4, you're screwed.
Well, but it's talking more about over planning or overachieving when in fact you can actually get the same end result without having to make yourself bonkers in the process.
Right.
Which brings back the conversation about a nonlinear path of how you get there. And I talk a lot with people on this podcast about the sort of linear to nonlinear spectrum that we all land on somewhere. How do you see that dynamic in just people in general and as well as your own life?
If I'm understanding your question, what does nonlinear look like in my life and other people's lives? Is that what?
Well, but also it's not like there's a light switch that's like linear, nonlinear. It's a spectrum that moves through. Like we were talking before we started recording about making amazing charts and then not using them. Like doing the linear thing, so we got some kind of bumpers in our head about what the structure is going to be, and then running off with it, right?
Yeah, that. I mean, that sums up what I was doing, let's say, with this Hoffman training or with any work, prepping, making everything look great, and having the lists and all the things to do, and then not actually doing those things, like not following the list, not doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nonlinear people, as you know, do a lot of spinning here, little eddies over here. There's this cycle going on, and maybe you shoot off, and that really that is my life, right? I am so start at point A and then do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'll use how I'm studying for becoming a Hoffman teacher as an example. I had in my mind, okay, I need to sit down, which just makes me want to be ill. The feeling, like the picture of sitting down and reading through the guide, the material, and memorizing and learning. And I just wanted to be sick. So now my nonlinear way of doing it is, so I have my work on a music stand, because all of this work is presenting, and I practice presenting. I go through the different presentations and I try them. I voice record them. And since I live in Colorado, I get out and hike all the time. So then I listen to my recordings as I'm hiking. So I'm moving, I'm getting it in my body. I also have a box on my kitchen table that has all the different titles of all the different presentations. And each day I will pull out a title and I will practice that. So, and then so the standing up with with the music stand, and I'm engaging my body, I'm engaging my brain so much better than sitting there. What other tricks do I have? I love it when somebody says, well, what is the Hoffman Institute? And then I have to explain it, because it just gets in my bones more. Right. And so for me, a lot of the nonlinear work is moving.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of studies about movement being able to get information into the body easier. I know in acupuncture school we would all walk while we were memorizing points, locations, and whatnot. But even before that, in my first career, when I was a theatrical stage manager, people would get off book with their lines much faster once we got them on their feet. Sitting and reading around the table, they do some memorization in their homework, when they were in rehearsal, but it didn't really start to become, come alive until they started physically moving in the rehearsal
Absolutely.
hall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love doing walking coaching.
Mhm.
I love when many people want to just do Zoom, not just, but do Zoom. And
Right.
that's fine. I'm fiddling.
Yep.
My hands are fiddling. I'm moving. Can't tell.
Sure.
Um, but I love when my clients are open to just doing phone,
Mhm.
because I can move around my home, my office while I'm coaching. And it's so much more, I want to say spot on,
Yeah.
and taking out that visual, right, is also
Mhm.
really helpful.
Well, and I find lately that phone calls are so, in some ways, so juicy and deep compared to,
Yes, I
I mean,
agree.
the way they used to be when the phone was tied to the wall and you had to like lay on the floor to carry on a conversation. Um, I say dating myself.
No,
Um,
I
but
remember those. Oh,
but um, but I find that there's something very, I mean, even though I've got earbuds in and I have your voice in my head right now, there's something very intimate about being able to carry on because it's like if a friend came over and talked to you while you were folding laundry, you know.
yeah, so much
Sometimes,
better.
yeah, sometimes those conversations happen while you're doing something else,
Yeah,
informs the conversation in a way or allows the conversation to slide more deeply. It's a little bit like a softer version of those deep conversations that happen around campfires,
yeah,
where
yeah,
nobody's looking at each other. Everybody's looking at the fire, and things just come out that don't
yeah,
otherwise have a
yeah,
space.
yeah. It's that mind-body connection. I'm really
Yep.
glad, like I had said before we got on the call, that it's coming more to the forefront because I truly believe that to make long-lasting change, talk therapy is great, but somatic therapy is using your body to
Hmm.
to make change. Having that self-compassion
Yep.
really is so incredibly effective.
So taking that to the bigger picture of the octopus movement's concept of the human mycelium,
Mhm.
how do you see that playing out?
That's a really good question. And to be totally honest, I don't know the whole human mycelium definition very well. So if you wouldn't mind
Well,
sharing that, then I can answer your question.
well, in Perry's lovely nonlinear way, he's connected mushrooms and octopi, and
Yeah.
um, and it's about that. It's about the same that how humanity has a
Yeah.
shared connection in the way that the trees do through the
Right.
mycelium,
Right.
and how the more we become aware of that connection, the more we become aware of everyone. Here,
There we go.
Perry put up a tag for
Yeah.
us: human
Thanks, Carrie.
mycelium, the organic network of
Yeah.
humans.
So
Um,
great. That is so helpful.
but
Yeah.
how that the more we become aware of that, the
Mm.
the more we are able to solve the unsolvable and tackle these big questions. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I mean, in my mind, it's hard for me to get my brain wrapped around the thought that we're not all connected. Like,
Mhm.
of course we are.
Right,
And I feel as though the more compassionate, like I'm just going to keep on this theme of compassion, the more compassionate we are with ourselves, the more compassionate we can be with other people, right?
mhm,
It's really it's easier to say to your child or a friend, like, oh, yeah, oh, you're really hurting. I can see this. But it's really hard for us to do it for ourselves. And so I think there's that connection. But, I mean, it's very much like Buddhist monks. They meditate to bring world peace,
mhm,
right? And so it's that same, however we're treating ourselves is how we're going to be treating the world.
right.
And so whether that's through your own personal work, whether it's supporting others, that ripple effect. And actually, that's a lot of what my podcast, Our Defining Moments, is about.
Mhm,
Um, these moments in time that change your life, but then they ripple out.
yep.
It doesn't just change your life; it changes your family's life, your community's life, the country's, and it goes on and on and on. So
Mhm.
I think I'm answering your question.
You are, you are, you
I've
are.
not been able to ever understand how we are not connected.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's hard for me to get my brain around that.
Well, and I think that's, one, people that are drawn to the type of work we do, but also people that tend to take the nonlinear path, or it's almost like we don't give up that knowing from when we were kids.
Yeah.
We don't give up that knowing
Good.
that we're all connected.
Yeah.
And how that plays out. And so yeah, it's interesting to see how, you know, a thought expressed or lived in one version of life ripples out through the whole planet in some cases.
Yeah. And what we say to ourselves is extremely important.
Yes, the language we use to describe being alive makes all the difference.
Right.
And
if we're
go ahead.
if we're beating ourselves up, you know, we're going out into the world not feeling great, feeling kind of yucky and gross, and maybe you yell at somebody who, you know, cuts in line and at the red light or whatever it is, you know, it's that ripple effect is real.
Yep. Well, and I think it even goes so far as the stories that we tell ourselves about not even like our emotions. I mean, yes, in that case, you know, not yelling at people is fabulous, but also creating stories that are big enough to live in, stories that allow for possibility and growth and connection through the language that we use.
Right.
You know, makes a big difference in how. And then by creating that bigger story, you're absolutely connecting to the people around you. You know, you can't help but to.
It feels as though, going back to when I mentioned earlier, like I was adopted, like that was my story, you know, like I'm an adopted person, but I'm so much more than that. Right. So I'm an adopted person, and I created patterns around how I move through the world and in relationships, and because of that story. And when I open up that story of, you know, I am all these other things as well, it just feels lighter. Right.
Oh yeah, completely. Completely. Language is super powerful that way.
Yeah.
And I think it also builds to have lighter, more expansive language. I think also creates room for more resiliency and more flexibility in the face of change.
I agree. I agree.
And you do a fair amount of work with people. It's sort of that change point, right?
I do.
With the coaching that you do.
So I was a career coach first. I was in education and working kind of in the career services and education and higher ed. And then became a career coach and a victim advocate at the same time. And then around when I started both of those, I knew I wanted to combine those two somehow. And so I got certified to be a trauma coach and or a trauma-informed coach. But I work with a lot of people who have experienced trauma either at work or in childhood or 2 months ago. And so in that realm of my work, it's really around, so a lot of people who have been traumatized as children have a real hard time understanding sense of self, having a sense of self. Who am I? Right? Because like we were just saying, I am somebody who was sexually abused when I was eight or whatever, you know, the story is, which is so valid, right? Because what
of course it
happened. What a horrific, right? Exactly. And so really helping people to learn who they are again as an adult. And giving yourself a lot of forgiveness. There's a lot of people, as you know, I'm sure, who have experienced trauma who blame themselves. Like, I can't believe I put myself in that situation. I shouldn't have done this, right? And so really changing that and bringing in self-compassion and forgiveness, right? And in the career coaching, same thing, you know, it's we tell ourselves what we can and we can't do. We have these limiting beliefs and we live by them, right? You know, I couldn't possibly do that. They would never hire me, right? And so interrupting that story and then being self-compassionate. I mean, it's much more complicated than that, but that's, you know, awareness of what it is you're telling yourself you can and can't do, and then doing something different, recognizing it, giving yourself some love and doing something different. Some of my favorite work, the limiting beliefs work, is just, I love it. And my clients if 9 out of 10 times people cry, which is great. I love it. And when somebody doesn't, I'm like, shoot, what am I doing wrong? I'm doing something wrong here. They're not crying. So thanks for asking about that.
Oh, completely. Yeah, I had a classmate in acupuncture school. For whatever reason, the class that we all cried in happened to always be on Thursday, and so he would always arrive at school and go, "Welcome to Crying Thursday. Who's first?" You know. But yeah, I mean,
Love
because
it.
there's a lot to release for a lot of people. But
Yeah.
what I also find sometimes though is that people are just as bottled up about things like laughter. They
Mm.
have denied themselves, you know, under the guise of being responsible. They have
Yeah.
denied themselves finding delight in things.
Great. Can't have
And
fun here.
right, can't have. I'll
Right.
have fun later after I've accomplished this 947 things, but then I'll have a
Yeah.
list of another 947 things I have to do after that. And and I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing the things that people deny themselves
Yeah,
unknowingly.
like play,
Mhm.
we are born these lovely little creatures and we're full of life and potential and play. And then,
Yep,
we go through life and we're, dark, heavy or whatever it is. But really bringing back play into your life is also so
yep,
important. And I'm going to read a quote that is above my desk here. And it's by John Dewey, who was an educator. It's my favorite quote. And I feel like when I found this, I was like, oh my God, that's me. It's okay. It's okay to be me. To be playful and serious at the same time is possible, and it defines the ideal mental condition, right? So I
I
know
love that. I
it
love
just
that.
gives so much permission to, right?
Hmm.
Like we have all this heavy stuff in our lives, and
Yeah,
we can be light about some things also. And I mean, even in my trauma coaching, there's space to joke around and be light
hmm,
and it's yeah, that levity I feel people really need.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we could go on for ages, I think.
I know.
Um,
I love it.
so
I love talking to you.
well, we'll make some time without Tanya.
Great.
Um, so, do you have any tips for our listeners about how to connect to this sort of nonlinear, wonder-seeking part of themselves?
Mm, yeah, just I mean, appreciate it. I love it. Love yourself. Love the fact that you learn differently than a lot of people, that you go about your life differently. It's so ingrained in us to start something, do it, do it, do it, and end something.
Right.
And so many people can't do that. They really struggle at that because they want to do six other things, and just love that up, embody that. Like right
Mhm.
on, that's a superpower. I swear, I mentioned this before, but once I really accepted and loved all these weird, quirky differences in my life, like it changed my life. Those are my superpowers, right? And so um, it's so easy to think that we have to do it all how everyone else does.
Yep.
And wow, we don't. I mean, and I'm living proof that, if I can accept, that I can actually study differently, walking around, moving, recording myself, going for a hike, stomping on like literally stomping on negative beliefs I have about myself, right?
Sure.
That all those things just allows ourselves to be self-compassionate. And that is so important.
Yeah. Well, and that's what
Yeah.
I love about the octopus movement is that you talk about doing it like everybody else does. Well, you spend enough time swimming around the octopus movement and you're like, I am doing it like everybody else. I'm doing it exactly my way, because
Yes.
everybody else is over there doing their own interesting
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
to do life,
Right.
which is
Right, we're all
just
kind of in our own little doing our own things. Yeah, but
yeah,
yes, but non-linear. I mean,
yeah,
it was drilled into me that you get a job when you're whatever 27 and you
yeah,
stay in that job your entire life. And so, right, there can be a lot of
yeah.
shame when you bounce around and ooh,
Hmm.
yeah. So really looking maybe at the shame that you have also around I don't do it like everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then
real quick
bringing
before
compassion.
we run out of time, tell people how they can
Yeah.
get in touch with you.
Well, my email is mary.mcclements@gmail.com, but my coaching business is takepassagecoaching.com. And so you can reach me there. I don't think you can reach me through my podcast, but yeah, takepassagecoaching.com is the easiest way to find me. And I'm
Right.
currently going to be changing some pictures around and changing the color of my website because that's the stuff I love to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody else for joining us. And if you have any questions about how you can join the Octopus Movement, you can reach out to me here on LinkedIn or on Facebook. And you can also go to theoctopusmovement.org. And just remember that we all started out life outside the box. So embrace your inner octopus and come join the movement. Come on in, the water's fine.
Yeah,
And
it's so lovely.
let's bloom a sustainable future together. I'm Janice Campbell for the Octopus Podcast, and we'll see you next time.